what is it? How do we get around the perception that black people are the criminals and that the white people don't have to be police? How do we get around? Because I was watching your interview, the recent interview about with the detective.
Oh, with Harry Houck, yeah.
Exactly. And what he kept hammering home was like,
black people
listen,
black
people do all the crimes. And I know that's not true. No. You know that's not true. But how do we get around that perception?
Well, it's funny, too, just as an aside to that, because, he said to me, I remember that we were debating on CNN, and I said, well, I laid out all these statistics, and I pointed to Stanford study and other places that show that black people are disproportionately criminalized, abused, shot, murdered, et cetera. And he said, well, you can't trust these statistics, da-da-da-da-da. And it's amazing. You trust statistics that say that black people
are criminals,
but you don't trust statistics that say the police do criminal activity. You can't pick and choose in that way.
But they do.
They do, because it's easy to believe that black people are the biggest everything.
Yes.
How do we do it? Well, it happens through the media. It happens through public policy. It happens through everyday speech. For example, and it's been happening forever. I don't want to get all academic on you, but if you read Black Reconstruction, W.E.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction, he wrote it in 1935. And the first 3 chapters, it's one of the most important books, I think, of the 20th century. But in that first 3 chapters, he talks about, the first chapter is about the slave, the second chapter is about the white worker, and the third chapter is about the planner, the managerial class, the bosses, right? And essentially what Du Bois is saying in a nutshell is the white worker should want to end slavery just as much as the slave, because the white worker will never be able to find a job if there's slavery.
Right.
Because if there's slaves, why would I pay a white dude to do this job if I can get this slave to do it, right? And we don't pay slaves, right? So white workers should be fighting with slaves to end slavery for their own well-being. But the question was, why don't they? And it was because they want to be like the bosses. They want to be like the planters. They would rather identify with wealthy white folks who are bosses who don't even like them, because they can close ranks around whiteness at the expense of the nigga. That's what Chris Rock was saying. He said there's a one-legged janitor up there that won't trade places with me and I'm rich. He's making the same argument, right? Yeah. Because there's something about what he called those psychic wages of whiteness, right? There's whiteness as property, right? And so the idea is that if whiteness is property, I'd rather be white than be black, no matter what the black circumstance is. So when it comes to criminalization, when it comes to welfare, when it comes to all these narratives of black people, part of what they do is they convince vulnerable white people to believe those stories so that they can have an investment in just not being black. So you'll believe that all black people are on welfare.
Welfare, the myth of
the welfare queen, right? They drag out a welfare queen. The welfare queen is racial code, right? They didn't say she was black,
but you knew she was.
Yeah,
black.
Well, look, the example was always like she ride around in a Cadillac. She live in a Taylor home. She live in Cabrini Green. She live in Richard Allen in Philly. Mm-hmm. She got 5 kids, 6 baby daddies. Shit don't even make sense, right? You know what I mean? and her name is Taquanda. And so you watch that on Sally Jesse Raphael or Donahue or all them old shows, even Oprah back in the day, and you'd be like, oh, welfare is fucked up.
Ricky Lake.
Right, Ricky Lake, all that shit, right? So you might be a poor white person in Tennessee who actually is getting WIC.
You're the welfare queen.
You are literally the welfare queen, because most people on welfare in this country are white, female, and young, not black, statistically, right? But because you don't like black people, and because you're taught that these black people are hypersexual, dangerous, irresponsible, lazy, etc., you vote against welfare, you're actually voting against yourself.
Right.
So that logic makes it so it becomes easy to believe that, right? So you believe that the drugs are being taken by black people when white people use cocaine at the same rate. You believe that we're killing each other.
Maybe at a higher rate.
At higher rate, it actually is a higher rate, because a lot of stuff is based on reports. And wealthy white people who use cocaine more than anybody don't have to report it because they don't have those kind of engagements. So all that to say, part of why it's easy to believe it is because people who should not be believing it are convinced to believe it to make themselves feel better about not being black.